Today we are going to talk about the regulation of receptor. In the previous lecture we have seen the various types of mechanism of action. Then we have seen the receptor concept, then various types of receptor. Now we'll see the regulation of receptor. Regulation of receptor means either there is a down regulation of receptor or up regulation of receptor. So what is meant by down regulation and up regulation? When we say down regulation of receptor, we use prolonged use of agonist. Prolonged use of agonist. So because of prolonged use of agonist, there is a decrease in the receptor number and sensitivity. There is a decrease in the number of receptors and sensitivity of receptors is also decreased. And that's why there is a decrease in the drug effect. We'll take example of salbutamol. Where we use salbutamol? Salbutamol used in the asthmatic patients. So chronic use, prolonged use or chronic use of salbutamol down regulates the beta 2 receptors, beta 2 adrenoreceptors, which may be responsible for decreased effect of salbutamol in asthmatics. Right? Chronic use of salbutamol, and because of chronic use of salbutamol, there is a down regulation of the beta 2 adrenoreceptors, and that's why there is a decreased response of salbutamol in asthmatics, and that is called as down regulation of receptors. Now we'll see the up regulation of receptor. In up regulation of receptors, there is a prolonged use of antagonist, and because of prolonged use of antagonist, the receptor numbers will get increased. Receptor numbers will get increased and sensitivity of the receptors will also get increased. So we call it as a super sensitivity of the receptor. We'll call it as a super sensitivity of the receptor. In down regulation, there is a desensitization of the receptor. Desensitization of the receptor occur in the down regulation, and in up regulation there is a super sensitivity of the receptor, and that's why there is increased response to an agonist. That's why there is increased response to an agonist. We'll take example of propranolol. Propranolol is a beta blocker, or you can say agonist, or we simply say propranolol is a beta blocker, non-selective beta blocker. When it is suddenly stopped after prolonged use, what will happen? Some patient experience withdrawal reaction, withdrawal symptoms. Withdrawal symptoms such as nervousness, anxiety, palpitation, tachycardia, rise in blood pressure, increased incidence of angina, or even there is a development of myocardial infarction. And why is it so? Because of upregulation or super sensitivity of the upregulation and super sensitivity of the beta receptors to the catecholamines. Right? There is a upregulation or super sensitivity of the beta receptors to the catecholamines, and that is called as the regulation of receptors. Now, dose response relationship. Dose response relationship is the pharmacological effect of the drug depend upon the plasma concentration at the site of action. Plasma concentration at the site of action, and this is determined by the dose of administered drug. Such a relationship is called as dose response relationship. Means we have to draw the curve against time and plasma concentration of a drug, or dose and plasma concentration of a drug. Dose and plasma concentration of a drug. So that is called as dose response relationship. That is called as dose response relationship. If we draw the dose on the x-axis and on the y-axis there is a response, we call it as a dose response relationship. Now there is a graded dose response curve. Graded dose response curve means initially the extent of response increases with increase in dose till the maximum response is reached. Right? What happens initially? If we increase the dose, extent of response will also increase. Right? If we increase the dose, response of our extent of response also increase, but at some point, as you can see in the diagram, at some point the response will not increase. If we still increase the dose, response will not going to increase. Response will not going to increase, and that is called as ceiling effect of a drug. That is called as the ceiling effect of a drug. Means if you increase the dose, but up to certain extent that response will be seen. But after certain limit, that response will be plateau. Response will be seen like this only. Whatever you are increasing the dose, the response will not increase, and that is called the ceiling effect of a dose. Ceiling effect of a dose, or we can say graded dose response curve. The dose response curve has a shape of rectangular hyperbola. As you can see in the diagram, the dose response curve will look like a rectangular hyperbola. Then log dose response curve. After the maximum effect has been obtained, further increase in doses does not increase the response. That is called as the ceiling effect. If the dose is plotted on a logarithmic scale, if the dose response curve is plotted on a logarithmic scale, the curve becomes the sigmoid shape. Right? As you can see, the curve is like the sigmoid shape. Now there is one more thing I would like to tell you here. There is a quantal dose response curve. All or none phenomenon. Means either response will be there and response is not there. That is called as quantal dose response curve. Means antiemetic drugs, either it will stop the vomiting or it will not. That is called as all or none phenomenon or quantal dose response curve. In that particular things, what happen? Either the response will be there or response will not be there. For example, I told you antiemetic drugs, either that will stop the vomiting or it will not. That is called as quantal dose response curve, all or none phenomenon. Now we'll see steep slope indicate a small increase in dose produces large increase in the response. As you can see here, there is a steep dose response curve and flat dose response curve. There are two if you see in the diagram, there is a steep dose response curve and a flat dose response curve. Now what does this steep dose response curve indicate? If you increase the small dose of a drug, there is a rapid increase in the response or large increase in the response, for example in the loop diuretics. So in case of such drugs, such drugs are more likely to cause the toxicity, and that's why we need the individualization of dose. Right? Now, if you see the flat dose response curve. Now, flat dose response curve indicate if you increase the dose, there is only little increase in the response. So that we call it as a flat dose response curve. So example, thiazide diuretics. And for such drugs, standard doses can be given in most of the patient. Right? Okay. Now the most important thing, potency and efficacy of a drug. The amount of drug required to produce a desired response is called potency. Right? Now what is the efficacy of a drug? Efficacy of a drug means the maximum effect that can be produced by a drug. The maximum effect that can be produced by a drug is the efficacy, and potency is the amount of drug required to produce a desired response. Now, potency, the lower the dose required, more potent is the drug. Lower the dose required, more potent is the drug. Means analgesic dose of morphine is only 10 mg and pethidine is 100 mg. Means lower dose of morphine is enough to produce the analgesia. So which drug is more potent? We can say that morphine is 10 times more potent than pethidine. Why? Because only 10 mg of morphine is required for the analgesia and 100 mg of pethidine is required for the analgesia. So which drug is more effective or which drug is more potent? Morphine is 10 times more potent than pethidine. Now efficacy. Efficacy means maximum effect that can be produced by a drug. Now if you see, morphine is more efficacious than aspirin as the analgesic. Whatever the dose of aspirin you are giving, but it will not going to produce that much analgesia as compared to morphine. Means morphine will more efficacious than aspirin as an analgesic. Right? So here you can see the difference between potency and efficacy. In case of potency, if you see these curves, means dose response curve, these two things, drug A and drug B. Here we have taken the example of morphine and pethidine. Morphine will produce the effect of analgesia. The morphine will produce the effect of analgesia in 10 milligram, and pethidine will require 100 milligram. So drug A is more potent than drug B, means morphine is more potent than pethidine because it requires less dose to achieve that particular effect. Then second thing, when we compare the efficacy of drug A for the morphine and B is the aspirin. If you will take example of morphine and aspirin, means whatever the concentration of aspirin, if you are taking the larger dose of aspirin, but still it will not produce that kind of analgesia which can produce by morphine. That means drug A is more efficacious than drug B. That means morphine is more efficacious than aspirin as an analgesic. So what is potency? Amount of drug required to produce a given response or desired response, that is called as potency, and maximum response that can be produced by a drug, that is the efficacy. Now we'll see the therapeutic index. Therapeutic index is the index of margin of safety. The dose response curve for a different action of drug could be different. Dose response curve for a different action of drug could be different. So salbutamol may have one dose response curve for the bronchodilation and other for the tachycardia. So distance between beneficial effect and unwanted effect indicate the safety margin of the drug. What is therapeutic index? Therapeutic index is the margin of the safety. It's a margin of the safety. Now we'll see. Now there are two things that is called as the median lethal dose and median effective dose. Median lethal dose and median effective dose. And this therapeutic index is the ratio of median lethal dose and median effective dose. Now for that, what is mean by median lethal dose? It's a dose of drug which is lethal to 50% of population. What is median lethal dose? Median lethal dose is the dose which is lethal or toxic to 50% of population. That is LD50. And median effective dose, the dose that produce desired effect or beneficial effect in 50% of the population, that is called as median effective dose. The ratio between LD50 or TD50 to the ED50, that is called as the therapeutic index. As you can see, if this is the dose response curve, as you can see here the dose response curve, as you can see somewhere here ED50 is there. ED50 means this is the dose of the drug which is effective in 50% of the population. As you can see, dose of drug which is effective in 50% of population, and as you can see over here, this is the TD50. This is the dose of drug which is lethal to 50% of population. If you want to calculate the therapeutic index, now what is the therapeutic index? Therapeutic index is the difference between therapeutic effect and toxic side effect. Right? This is the therapeutic index. And if the therapeutic index is more, the safer is the drug. Right? Now what is the significance of therapeutic index? Therapeutic index gives the idea about the safety of drug. Right? It gives the idea of safety of drug. The higher the therapeutic index, safer is the drug. For a drug considered reasonably safe, the therapeutic index should be more than 1. Penicillin has the highest therapeutic index and lithium and digoxin, they have the low therapeutic index. And one more thing, therapeutic index may be different for each action of the drug. Therapeutic index may be different for each action of the drug. For example, therapeutic index of aspirin used for headache is different from its therapeutic index for inflammation, right? Now we'll see the therapeutic window. Therapeutic window or therapeutic range. Therapeutic window or therapeutic range. The size is therapeutic window and therapeutic range. It is the plasma concentration range below which the drug is ineffective and above the toxicity appears. What is therapeutic window? Plasma concentration of a drug. If there is a, as you can see in the diagram, this is the therapeutic range or therapeutic window. Above that, there is a chance of therapeutic toxicity. Below, there is a chance of therapeutic failure. Above, there is a chance of adverse effects, and below, there is a chance of therapeutic failure. So, in that particular range, only the drug is effective. In that particular range of plasma concentration, drug is effective, and that is called as the therapeutic window or therapeutic range. Now, drugs having low therapeutic index, for example, digoxin. Digoxin is effective on only 0.5 to 1.5 nanogram per ml, and it will be toxic if it is more than 2 nanogram per ml. Same thing with the lithium. It is effective in 0.5 to 1.5 milliequivalent per liter. And same thing with the other drugs like theophylline, phenytoin, gentamicin, amphotericin B, 5-fluorouracil. All these drugs have very low therapeutic index or narrow safety margin or narrow therapeutic range or narrow therapeutic window, whatever you can see, right? So basically these drugs, they are effective in particular range. Above that particular range, they will produce toxicity, and below that particular range, it will show therapeutic failure. Now we'll see combined effect of drugs. When two or more drugs are given simultaneously, the drugs may be additive, synergistic, or antagonistic. We'll see additive effect of drug. When combined effect of two or more drug is equal to sum of their individual effect. The combined effect of two or more drug is equal to sum of their individual effect. That means effect of drug A plus B is equal to effect of drug A plus effect of drug B. For example, combination of ibuprofen and paracetamol, that is the Combiflam, as an analgesic, the drug will be more effective because effect of drug A plus B, that is the additive effect. Or ephedrine with theophylline in the bronchial asthma. Ephedrine with theophylline in bronchial asthma. So we call it as the additive effect. Now potentiation. Potentiation of a drug means enhancement of action of one drug by another drug which is inactive. Enhancement of action of one drug by another drug which is inactive is called as the potentiation of a drug. So effect of drug A plus B is more than effect of drug A plus effect of drug B. For example, if we take example of levodopa and carbidopa in Parkinsonism, we give this levodopa and carbidopa combination, we call it as a syndopa, because levodopa is metabolized peripherally by peripheral decarboxylase enzyme. So we'll give carbidopa, which is peripheral decarboxylase inhibitor. So combination of levodopa and carbidopa. So levodopa will not get metabolized peripherally. So large amount or large concentration of levodopa will reach to the brain, and that's how it will be effective in Parkinsonism. That's called potentiation of a drug. Now synergism. Synergism means when action of one drug is synergistic to the other drug. Means total effect of combination is greater than sum of their independent effect. Right? Total effect of combination is greater than the sum of their independent effect. For example, sulfonamide will inhibit the drug. Sulfonamide will inhibit the enzyme folate synthetase, and trimethoprim will inhibit the enzyme folate reductase. So in the common metabolic pathway, these two drugs will inhibit the two different enzymes, that is called as the sequential blockade of the drug. That means one drug will be a synergistic to the other drug. There is a symbiosis between these two drugs. One drug will help to the other drug, and that's how they will increase their therapeutic effect. Means there is a increase, what we can say, because of this combination cotrimoxazole, which contains sulfamethoxazole and trimethoprim. So there is a increase in the therapeutic effect of the drug, that is called as the synergism. Now there is one term that is called as the antagonism. Antagonism, one drug opposing or inhibiting the action of another, that is called as antagonism. So based on the mechanism, there is a chemical antagonism, physiological antagonism, or it is also called as the functional antagonism, or there is a reversible or irreversible antagonism, which is a type of competitive antagonism, and there is also a non-competitive antagonism. Now we'll see one by one. What is chemical antagonism? Chemical antagonism, when two substances interact chemically to result in inactivation of the effect. Two drugs interact chemically to result in inactivation of the effect. For example, chelating agents inactivate heavy metals like lead and mercury. We have already seen this example. What is chemical antagonism? When two substances interact chemically, the result will be inactivation of the effect. So chelating agents inactivate heavy metals like lead, mercury, copper, iron. How they will act? These chelating agents, they act by chelating property. They trap the heavy metals, they convert into water soluble form, and that water soluble form will be rapidly excreted from the body. For example, antacids like aluminum hydroxide will neutralize the gastric acid, so we can use antacids in the treatment of peptic ulcer. Now, physiological or functional antagonism. Two different drugs act on two different receptors but on the same physiological system to produce opposing effect. Physiological antagonism or functional antagonism. Two different drugs like A and B, they will act on two different receptors like C and D, but on the same physiological system like E. But still they will produce different or opposite effects. Now, two different drugs, will take example of adrenaline and histamine. Adrenaline and histamine, these are two different drugs. They will act on two different receptors. Adrenaline will going to act on the adrenergic receptor, histamine will going to act on the histamine receptor, but on the same physiological system like bronchial smooth muscle. They will both act on the bronchial smooth muscle, but this adrenaline will produce bronchodilation and histamine will produce bronchoconstriction or bronchospasm. So we call it as a physiological antagonism, and that is the reason why adrenaline is the drug of choice in anaphylactic shock, because two different drugs will act on two different receptor but on the same physiological system, but still they produce opposite effect or opposite actions. Insulin and glucagon have opposite effects by acting on the blood sugar level. Right? Insulin will decrease the blood sugar level and glucagon will increase the blood sugar level, but the same physiological system is the blood glucose. Now, antagonism at the receptor level. The antagonist inhibit the binding of agonist to the receptor. Such antagonism, it may be reversible or irreversible. Now we'll discuss the reversible or competitive antagonism. Reversible or competitive antagonism. The agonist and antagonist compete for the same receptor. If they are competing for the same receptor, that's why it is called as the competitive antagonist. Why they are compete with each other? Because they are chemically similar to each other, right? But in case of competitive antagonism, what happens if we add competitive antagonist to the agonist? There is a parallel rightward shift of the dose response curve. Because there is a decrease in the potency of drug. But one more thing, if you want to overcome the antagonism, you can increase the concentration of the agonist. By increasing the concentration of agonist, you can overcome the antagonism, and that's why it is called as the reversible antagonism or equilibrium antagonism. For example, acetylcholine and atropine, they compete for the same receptor. Which same receptor? Muscarinic receptor. So we call it as a competitive antagonism. So the antagonism effect can be overcome by increasing the concentration of acetylcholine at the muscarinic receptor. For a next example, D-tubocurarine and acetylcholine compete for the nicotinic receptor at the neuromuscular junction. So dose response curve will shift to the right. Dose response curve will shift to the right in presence of competitive antagonist. Now irreversible antagonism. The antagonist binds so firmly, so there is a strong covalent bond to the receptor so that it dissociates very slowly, or it will not going to dissociate. So it blocks the action of the agonist, and blockade cannot be overcome by increasing the dose of agonist, and hence it is called as the irreversible antagonism. Why it is called as irreversible antagonism? Because you cannot overcome the antagonistic effect. You cannot overcome the antagonistic effect, or you cannot overcome the blockade by increasing the dose of agonist. Example, phenoxybenzamine is the irreversible antagonist of adrenaline at alpha adrenergic receptor, and that is called as non-equilibrium or irreversible type of antagonism. And there is one more thing that is called as non-competitive antagonism. Non-competitive antagonism is the response of agonist. The response of agonist is blocked by antagonist by acting on a different site. Not on the receptor of agonist, but at a different site. Thus it blocks the action of agonist, and blockade cannot be overcome by increasing the dose of agonist. So in the graph or dose response curve, you will see the flattening of the dose response curve. Why? Because there is a decrease in the efficacy. There is a flattening of the curve. There is a flattening on the curve. So blockade of action of noradrenaline by the verapamil is the example of non-competitive antagonism. Now you will better understand over here. In competitive antagonism and in non-competitive antagonism. In competitive and non-competitive antagonism, as you see here, in competitive antagonism, there is a parallel rightward shift of the curve. In competitive antagonism, as you can see, there is a parallel rightward shift of the curve because there is a reduction in the potency of a drug. When we add competitive antagonist, there is a reduction in the potency of drug. But in case of non-competitive antagonism, there is a flattening of dose response curve. Why there is a flattening of dose response curve? Because there is a reduction in the efficacy of the drug. This is the main difference. Now we'll discuss the factors that modify the effect of drugs. The same dose of drug can produce different degree of response in different patients and even the same patient under the different situation. So various factors which modify the response of drug. We'll see the body weight. How the body weight, the recommended dose is calculated for the average built person or medium built person, and for the obese and underweight persons the dose has to calculate individually. Mostly we have to take care of body surface area. Means body surface area is the best parameter to measure the dose of the drug, but it is inconvenient and hence it is not generally used. So how will you calculate the dose of drug by using body weight? Dose of drug is equal to body weight in kgs into the average adult dose. What is the average adult dose? Then divided by 70. How will you calculate the dose of drug using body weight? Body weight in kg into average adult dose divided by 70. Now age. The pharmacokinetics of many drugs changes with age, resulting in altered response in the extreme of age. In the newborn, liver and kidneys are not fully mature to metabolize and to excrete the drugs. For example, chloramphenicol may lead to grey baby syndrome because chloramphenicol will not metabolized easily in the newborn infant or in the newborn babies. Chloramphenicol will not going to metabolized because liver or the capacity of liver is not fully mature to metabolize the drug. That's why chloramphenicol may lead to grey baby syndrome. Other things like blood brain barrier is not well formed, so most of the drugs can easily reach to the brain. Now, the age related changes in the body. What are the age related changes in the body? There is increase in the body fat. There is increase in the body fat, decrease in the total body water, increase in the volume of distribution, decrease lean body mass, decrease baroreceptor sensitivity, there's decrease SA node automaticity, decrease beta adrenergic responsiveness. One more thing, decrease renal function, so there is increased serum creatinine, decrease renal excretion of some drugs, decrease serum albumin, decrease hepatic blood flow, but increase receptor sensitivity of some drugs as per the CATZUN. So these are the age related changes in the body. Gastric acidity is low, intestinal motility is slow, skin is delicate and permeable to the drugs applied topically. Hence, calculation of the appropriate dose based on the body weight is important to avoid toxicity. Pharmacodynamic differences could exist, means barbiturate which produce sedation in adult, it may produce excitation in children. So we have to calculate the dose very properly. Formula for calculation of dose in children we call it as the Young formula. Children dose is calculated by age in years into adult dose divided by age plus 12. So in the elderly, there is a problem with the elderly also. In elderly people, capacity of the liver and kidney decline day by day or reduced, so they are more susceptible for the adverse effect. So you have to decrease the doses of drug, you have to give the lower doses of drug in liver or kidney damage, or in case of elderly people. Elderly are at a higher risk of ototoxicity and nephrotoxicity due to streptomycin. They may lead to ototoxic or nephrotoxic because of streptomycin. So you have to decrease the dose of a drug. Then gender differences, hormonal effects and smaller body size, they may influence the drug response in women. So special care is necessary while prescribing for the pregnant and lactating women during menstruation. Then species and race. Response to drug may vary with species and race. So rabbits are resistant to the atropine because there is the presence of atropine esterase in the liver, which will metabolize the drug, so that rabbits are resistant to atropine. Such variation makes it difficult to extrapolate the results of animal experiments. One more thing, blacks need higher doses of atropine to produce mydriasis. Black needs higher doses of atropine to produce mydriasis. So this is the difference between species and race. Now, the diet and environment. Food interfere with the absorption of many drugs. For example, tetracycline, if it is given along with milk, and in milk there is a presence of calcium. So tetracycline forms complexes with calcium present in the food. So it may interfere with the absorption. Polycyclic hydrocarbon, which is present in the cigarette smoke, it may induce the microsomal enzymes, so that will enhance the metabolism of some drugs. Now, route of administration. Occasionally, route of administration also modify the pharmacodynamic parameters, pharmacodynamic response. The best example, when we give magnesium sulfate orally, it will act as a purgative, so we use in the constipation. But when this magnesium sulfate is given intravenously, it will produce CNS depression and has anticonvulsant effect, right? Magnesium sulfate, that's why it is given in pregnant woman for the eclampsia. It is given in the eclampsia. when it is applied topically, it will reduce the local edema. When it is given as the retention enema, it will reduce the intracranial tension. So same drug, if you change the route of drug administration and dose, it will produce different actions. Now there is some genetic variations, genetic factors. There is a variation in the individual response to a drug, could be genetically determined or genetically mediated. Now two things, pharmacogenetics and pharmacogenomics. What is pharmacogenetics? Pharmacogenetics is concerned with the genetically mediated variations in the drug response. It deals with the genetic influence on drug action and drug handling of the body. What is pharmacogenomics? Use of genetic information to guide the choice of drug and dose on an individual basis, that is called as the pharmacogenomics. Now, why there is a difference in the response? Mostly because of the variation in the amount of the drug metabolizing enzymes. Variation in the amount of drug metabolizing enzymes, since the production of these enzymes is genetically controlled. Production of these enzymes are genetically controlled. We'll see examples like acetylation of drug. The rate of drug acetylation means drugs which are metabolized by the acetylation reaction. Drugs which are metabolized by the acetylation reaction like isoniazide, sulfonamide, hydralazine, right? So these drugs are metabolized by acetylation reaction. So fast acetylation of isoniazide will lead to hepatotoxicity. Means faster the drug metabolized, so we need more and more drugs, we need more and more dose of isoniazide, so that may lead to the formation of metabolite which is toxic to the liver, and that may lead to the hepatotoxicity. Slow acetylation of isoniazide, accumulation of the drug in the peripheral nerves, that lead to peripheral neuropathy or peripheral neuritis. So this may occur in the those who are genetically determined. Those who are genetically determined. Or we'll take example of succinylcholine apnea. Succinylcholine is metabolized by the enzyme pseudocholinesterase in the normal individual, but some those who are genetically determined, in those there is a presence of atypical pseudocholinesterase, and this atypical pseudocholinesterase will not quickly metabolize succinylcholine. So in that, when succinylcholine is given to such people, there is a development of prolonged apnea. Why prolonged apnea? Because atypical pseudocholinesterase will not quickly metabolize the succinylcholine, and that's why duration of action of succinylcholine will increase, and that may lead to prolonged apnea due to persistent action of succinylcholine, because duration of action is increased. Now G6PD deficiency. G6PD, that means glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase, is the enzyme which is deficient in some people. When those people, when they exposed to the oxidant drugs like primaquines, sulfonamides, quinolones, they may produce hemolysis. They may produce hemolysis. Then certain diseases, presence of certain diseases can influence the drug response. For example, malabsorption, it may interfere with the absorption of drug. Drugs are poorly absorbed in case of malabsorption. Or in case of achlorohydria, it decreases the aspirin absorption by favoring its ionization. NSAIDs can aggravate the peptic ulcer disease. Liver diseases like cirrhosis of liver, rate of drug metabolism is reduced due to dysfunction of hepatocytes. Also plasma protein binding is reduced because of low serum albumin. Then in case of congestive cardiac failure, edema of gut mucosa and decreased perfusion of liver and kidneys, that may lead to cumulative toxicity like propranolol and inocaine. Renal dysfunction, drugs mainly get excreted through kidneys. Those are likely to accumulate, and that may lead to toxicity like streptomycin and amphotericin B. Repeated dosing can result in cumulation, tolerance, and tachyphylaxis. Now we will see cumulative toxicity. Cumulative toxicity means any drug will accumulate in the body if the rate of administration is more than the rate of elimination. So slowly administered drugs are particularly liable to cause cumulative toxicity. So prolonged use of chloroquine will lead to retinal damage. Now tolerance. The most important topic, tolerance is the need of a larger dose of a drug to produce a given response. Need of a or requirement of a higher dose of a drug to produce a given response, that is called as the tolerance. Tolerance may be natural or acquired. Natural tolerance, the species or race shows less sensitivity to the drug. Rabbit shows they are tolerant to atropine. Black, they are tolerant to the Mediatics. So it's a congenital or natural tolerance. Congenital or natural tolerance. Now there is an acquired tolerance. Acquired tolerance develops on a repeated administration of drug. When we repeatedly administered a certain drug, the patient or person initially responsive but later becomes tolerant. For example, barbiturates, opioids, nitrates, they produce the acquired tolerance. Means initially they are sensitive, later on they becomes tolerant. Tolerance may develop to some actions of drug but not to others. For example, morphine. Tolerance developed to the analgesic and euphoric effect but not to the constipating and miotic effect. Same thing with the barbiturates. Tolerance developed to the sedative action but not to its antiepileptic action. Now, why there is a development of tolerance mechanism? Pharmacokinetic tolerance, that is also called as the dispositional tolerance, means there is a reduced concentration of a drug at the site of action. Why there is a reduced concentration of the drug at site of action? Because there is a decreased absorption and increased metabolism and excretion. So we'll take example of rifampicin. Rifampicin will induce the metabolism of OC pills, right? It's a macrosomal enzyme inducer, so it will induce the metabolism of OC pills, so it will lead to contraceptive failure. Barbiturates, they induce the macrosomal enzymes and they will enhance their own metabolism. Now there is a pharmacodynamic tolerance. Pharmacodynamic tolerance, changes in the target tissue may pharmacodynamic tolerance, changes in the target tissue make it less responsive to the drug. It is called as functional tolerance, and it could be due to the downregulation of the receptor as in opioids or compensatory mechanism of the body. Means there is a blunting of response to some antihypertensives due to salt and water retention. Now there is a cross tolerance. Cross tolerance means development of tolerance in pharmacologically related drugs or those who are chemically similar. So we'll take example of chronic alcoholics. They show tolerance to the barbiturates and general anesthetics. Means they need more dose of barbiturates and general anesthetics to produce the given response. Now tachyphylaxis. Tachyphylaxis is the tachy means rapid and phylaxis means protection. Rapid protection against what we'll see. Or we can say it's a rapid tolerance or acute tolerance to the drug. Repeated use of certain drugs at a very short interval may result in rapid decrease of a pharmacological response. Examples like amphetamine, ephedrine, tyramine, and it's all because of the downregulation of the receptor. So there is a decreased number of receptor or sensitivity of the receptor, or we can call it the desensitization of the receptor. Second thing, there is a depletion of the stored neurotransmitter. Means repeated use of certain drugs, they may lead to depletion of stored neurotransmitter, right? And third thing, that is the slow dissociation of drug from the receptor binding. All these are the possibilities or reason for the decrease in the pharmacological response of a drug. Means initially there is a high response, it will decrease with the time. Means when we use the certain drugs at very shorter interval, there is a rapid decrease in the response. Why? Because there is a downregulation of the receptor, depletion of the stored neurotransmitter, and slow dissociation of drug from the receptor binding. Now there is a psychological factor. Means efficacy of drug can be affected by the patient belief, attitude, and expectation. This is particularly applicable to the centrally acting drugs. Means nervous and anxious patient require more dose of general anesthetics to calm the patient, and that is the terminology called as the placebo. Placebo is the Latin word, means the meaning I shall please, and this placebo effect depend upon the doctor-patient relationship. So what is placebo? Placebo is the inert substance which is given in the garb of medicine. It is the inert substance which is pharmacologically inactive, but still it is given in the garb of medicine. it works psychodynamically rather than pharmacodynamically. It works psychodynamically. It will produce response equivalent to the active drug. Placebos are used in the two situations. It will use as a control device in clinical trial of drug. When you have to compare the two drugs, safety or efficacy, we use this placebo as a dummy medication or a control device. Or to treat the patient who does not require an active drug, we can give placebos or dummy medication. Some individuals are more susceptible. They easily respond to the placebo. We call it as a placebo reactors. Placebo do induce a physiological response, means they can release endorphins in the brain and they may lead to analgesia. They release endorphins in the brain and that may lead to the analgesia. So you can give naloxone, which is an opioid antagonist which blocks the placebo analgesia effect. Or you can give the lactose tablet, capsules or distilled water for injection, different colorful injections, multivitamin preparations for the placebo effect. Multivitamin preparations are often misused as placebo when no medication is required. So this is all about the pharmacodynamics that we have just discussed in 3 parts.